Namaste, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another session of Ayush Talks. So this evening's session will feature Vaidya and Prasad ji. He is the guru at the Rashtriya Ayurveda Vidya Peeth, and he is also the director and chief physician at the Sunethri Ayurveda Ashram. This is in Kerala. Vaidya Prasad ji has over 27 years of experience as an Ayurveda practitioner as well as clinical experience, and he completed his post-graduation at the Salakya Tantra from the Government Ayurveda College in Thiruvananthapuram. He was also lucky enough to be a student of the basic principles of Ayurveda under the legendary Vidya Bhushanam K. Raghavan. And this was for 21 years. In 2006, he started the Sunethri Ayurveda Ashram and Research Center in a remote village in Kerala. He was a teacher till 2020 and headed an Ayurveda college as its principal for 5 years. In addition to his clinical duties, he serves as guru for the informal education program of the Rashtriya Ayurveda Vidya Peetham under the Ministry of Ayush. He also gives lectures, trains young Vaidyas, writes articles and columns, hosts radio talks. He loves music, reads books of all genres, and finds time in all of this to cultivate medicinal plants. So in this session, Vaidya ji will be discussing the importance of the original Ayurveda text. Vaidya ji, will you please join the session? Namaste, Vaidya Prasad ji.
Namaste. Namaste, Sophia ji, and namaste, Team Indica.
Thank you so much for collaborating with the Center for Ayurveda Studies. And I'm just going to hand over the session to you now, and we'll see you at the end when we open for questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, let me share my slides. Namaste to all. And to start with the session, let me offer my salutations to the Guru Parampara, especially my Guruji, Vaidya Bhushanam, K. Raghavan Tirumulpad. Chadurmukha Samarambham, Vagbhadacharya Madhyamam, Asmadacharya Padyandam, Vande Guru Paramparam. I am really happy, and I would like to express my gratitude to the host, the team, for giving me with this opportunity to be here with you all for this session. Actually, I'm supposed to speak something about a very interesting area. That is learning Ayurveda. The original premises matter. That is the topic of our discussion today. I hope the title itself is self-explanatory. While somebody is learning Ayurveda, the original premises of that learning is very, very important in the proper understanding of the topic. That is what we are going to say. So this is my starting point. Today's Ayurvedic education is more about validating the Sasthra with the tools and methodology of modern science. Even the basic graduate education in Ayurveda has got this tendency. This has changed the face of Ayurveda everywhere in the country, because we are all following a centralized curriculum for the learning of Ayurveda in the formal sector. But there are issues in this approach. The basic issue is that the tools used here for the validation of Ayurveda they are not the right ones for the validation of the system or this school. Here in this session, we look into some of the unique areas of Ayurveda which are to be given focus, or which are of the main areas where or which one should not miss while learning the Ayurveda properly, because they are considered as the hallmarks of Ayurveda. Of course, one can make n number of modifications or updations in the application of Ayurvedic principles, no issue. But that is not the case with the very basic principles, which we can call altogether as the Ayurveda Darshana. Ayurveda Darshanam. This Ayurveda Darshanam is the original identity of Ayurveda, or that is what makes this system Ayurveda. And that Ayurveda Darshana shall be taught and learned in its original premises without compromise. That is my pradigna in today's session. I can give many examples about this topic to highlight what I am trying to say, but enlisting them one after the other to cover the entire areas, that will be too big and time-taking, and it may not be able to explain everything in detail. So what I would like to do is, I'll make an attempt to list out a few of them, which will make the idea very clear. That is what I'm going to do in this presentation. In Ayurveda, Ayu or Ayus is a union of 4 principles. This Ayu or Ayus, I am not going to translate it into English because there may not be a perfect translation. Maybe a loose translation could be to call it as life. So it is a union of 4 principles called Sharira or Shariram, Indriyam, Manas, and Atma. Sharira means the physical body. Indriya means the sensory apparatuses. Manas may be translated as the mind. And again, Atma, a tough word to translate, but for the sake of explanation, I'm translating it as the soul. These principles, these 4 principles, Sharira, Indriya, Manas, and Atma, they have specific roles to play, and they cannot be separated from one another. So wherever there is a mentioning about Sharira in the literature, that invariably means Samanaska, Sendriya, Satma, Sharira. Samanaska, attached to Manas. Sendriya, attached to Indriya. Satma, attached to Atma, Sharira. So there is no compromise. One needs to have this important understanding or the essential understanding while learning Ayurveda and practicing Ayurveda. That is very, very important. So obviously, accepting a principle like Atma that makes Ayurveda connected to the philosophical schools of India and not to the Western medical school. This is very important idea. Now, Ayurveda is an applied knowledge system. Ultimately, at the end of the day, Ayurveda is an applied knowledge system. But of course, it has got many philosophical or metaphysical concepts in its theory as well as practice. And these concepts are hired from different schools of thought of India, like Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Nyaya, Vedanta, Bauddha, etc. So, the basic physics, chemistry, and biology, they are supposed to be the basic qualification for learning medicine. Coming to Ayurveda, the basic physics, chemistry, and biology as conceived in Ayurveda are taken from these philosophical schools. For example, Ayurveda accepts 6 padarthas. Padartha means there may be the categories or the terms of reference which is going across the literature. So these 6 padarthas are accepted in its basic discussion. They are, number 1, dravya, then guna, karma, samanya, vishesha, and samavaya. This is very unique to Ayurveda while we are learning, unlike any other system of medicine. So understanding these padarthas properly is very essential for understanding the basic treatises of Ayurveda properly. This is very important. Then, the theory of Panchabhutas. All natural objects of the world, as per Ayurvedic understanding, of course it is a hired idea from other philosophical schools of India. All natural objects are made up of 5 basic units. The Panchabhutas: Agasha, Vayu, Agni, Jala, and Prithvi. These 5 bhutas also accommodate the complete sensory realm of human existence. Agasha with Shabda, Vayu with Sparsha, Agni with Rupa, Jala with Rasa, and Prithvi with Gandha. And this concept of or theory of Panchabhuta also reveals how the nature and human body are related to each other. The natural world around us is a source of food and medicine in healthy and diseased stages respectively. So that connection is established because of this commonness or commonality between the human body and the natural world. This same natural world can turn out to be the killer if used inappropriately. Theoretically, it is proposed that the nature and the human body are not different but the same. This is a very important conviction while you learn Ayurveda. The apparent difference is only in terms of the dimensions. The former, the nature, is gross and the latter is subtle, or the former is macro and the latter is micro. So the basic applications of Ayurveda are rooted in this relationship between nature and human beings. So this is also an important area one should look for Ayurvedic learning properly. Then, Guna Karma Siddhanta. We have already mentioned that the 6 padarthas are there accepted in Ayurveda. The foundation of Sharira, human body, in Ayurveda, especially its medical branch, we can divide it into the surgical branch and the medical branch. In the medical branch, the Sharira is not that very much anatomical as it is in the case of modern medicine. Instead, it is based on Guna Karma Siddhanta. Even the anatomical understandings that we find in Ayurvedic textbooks have their roots in the Guna Karma Siddhanta. This is very important. It is based on this Guna Karma Siddhanta, as I mentioned earlier, that different substances are used as medicine or as food. And this commonality of Panchabhautikata in terms of Guna and Karma, that is very, very important in the Ahara Kalpana and Aushadha Kalpana of Ayurveda. So that is also very crucial point of understanding. Now, another important area is about Tridosha Siddhanta, the concept of or theory of Tridoshas. Tridoshas are Vayu, Pitta and Kapha. This is a unique tool in Ayurveda, which helps a Vaidya to understand the complex events happening in a human body in a simple but very, very clear manner. This is applicable to the physiological events or the Prakriti and the pathological events or the Vikriti alike. Each member of this group at Vayu, Pitta and Kapha, each dosha in its normal state represents a specific system with a specific group of functions. Each biological event happening in the body can be explained as done, executed by the doshas either alone or in combination. Thus, the theory of Tridoshas explains the living body as a system of systems, a system of systems. So that is also an important point. Now, regarding the dhatus and malas, we identify 7 dhadus in the Sharira. Dhatu, something which supports the system. Rasa, Rekta, Mamsa, Medas, Asthi, Majja and Shukra. These dhadus, they take part in the making of different organs, avayavas, and systems or srodasas in the Sharira. Each organ and system may have a dominance of a particular dhadu or dhadus sometimes. And specific dosha or doshas may be dominating there in the function of a specific organ or system. Coming to the malas, malas means the waste products or byproducts of different events that is happening in the body, especially certain types of transformations and maturations. The main malas are Shakrit, the fecal matter, Mutra, the urine, Sweda, the sweat, and other different types of malas or excretions through the different orifices of the body. There are specific srodasas explained, which are working in the Sharira to regulate the formation and excretion of malas. And these malas, interestingly, even though they are by and large known as the waste products, they have specific duties to deliver as long as they are accommodated within. So understanding these 3 areas, that means the doshas, dhadus and malas, correctly in terms of theory and application is one of the most important exercises that a learner of Ayurveda should gain mastery over during the formative time itself. Now, there is a principle called Agni. Agni means fire. So here, Agni, the fire principle within the human body, is an important consideration everywhere in Ayurveda. Whether it is health, whether it is disease, whether it is treatment, whether it is something else, Agni is a prime consideration. This Agni represents a system which works in the making of Sharira from food, making Sharira, the dhadus, from food, and which prevents the entry of various types of visha, toxins, from outside, and also destroy the visha which is formed inside, technically called as ama. So Agni is the most powerful system in a living body as far as the survival, the very survival is concerned. And any chikitsa, treatment, should primarily consider the restoration of Agni optimally. So that way, Ayurveda can be considered as Agni Chikitsa. There may not be any parallels to this idea of Agni as such in some other system. Now, Ayurveda is primarily a personalized system of intervention, highly personalized system. There is one approach called Purusham Vikshya, looking at each individual with his own merit or her own merit. That is how Ayurveda operates. And there are multiple variables or considerations which make one individual unique. That can be sometimes the Prakriti. Sometimes Prakriti means that doshic predominance. That is how it is understood. So it can be Prakriti. Sometimes Desha. Desha means the place of birth or the place of living. Then Kala. Kala means the time with respect to seasons and age. Sharira Bala, the strength in terms of the physical body. Sattva Bala. Sattva Bala means the strength in terms of mind. Agni Bala, the strength of Agni. Then Ahara. Ahara means the type of food one consumes. And Satmya. Satmya means the habituated behavioral patterns in terms of different aspects of lifestyle, like maybe sleep, exercise, etc. And also habituated climatic conditions like maybe the tropical one or the temperate one, etc. So with all these aspects, Ayurveda always makes one particular individual so unique, Purusham Vikshya. So it is that way a highly personalized approach. Then we have to understand certain terms again. Like first of all, Swasthyam. I have written Swasthyam, Dinacharya, Ritucharya and Sadvritam. So first we will find Swasthyam. This concept of Swasthyam is very important in Ayurveda. What is Swasthyam? Swasthyam means being in optimal health. Swastasya Swasthirakshanam. Swastasya Swasthirakshanam is identified as the primary object or benefit of following Ayurveda. Health here is the positive response or proactive response of the system towards an environment which is conducive for existence, nourishment, and growth. So health that way is more about an experience and not as considered as a commodity. And to be in Swastika, one should follow a healthy lifestyle. When I say the healthy lifestyle, that accommodates three basic domains: Kala, Artha, and Karma. Kala means the climatic conditions. Artha is the exposure to the sensory world, Indriyartha. And Karma is the activities done by or done with body, that means Kaya, by words, that means Vak, and by mind, Chitta. So these three domains of Kala, Artha, and Karma are considered as the three basic points of discussion in both health and illness. Then what is the difference? Three same things in both health and illness. The difference being the type of engagement a person is establishing with them. So basically, one should involve in the sensual world with care and control in order to be healthy, in Swastika. And the same is the case in the use of Kaya, Vak, and Chitta. So thus a healthy life needs a healthy control over Artha and Karma. So that requires a disciplined daily routine which one should follow, which should be value-based as well. One can find detailed descriptions on this aspect of living in the classical treatises of Ayurveda like Chanaka Samhita or Sushruta Samhita. And technically, that explanation is known as Dinacharya. Dinacharya means the charya for a day. And this Dinacharya is to be modified according to the different seasons. Then it becomes Ritucharya. Ritucharya means the modified Ritucharya according to, so as to suit the particular Ritu. And definitely all these Dinacharya and Ritucharya needs improvisations according to the difference in Desha and Kala. That is Dinacharya and Ritucharya. And while looking at the explanations of this Dinacharya and Ritucharya, one can see many value-based practices like respecting the elderly, respecting the women, which makes sure that the individual leads a responsible life as an individual, as a member of a family, and as a member of the society. These sort of practices together are generally known as Sadvritta or Achara Rasayana. That is the fourth one that I have shown in the slide. Sadvritta. Now, another important idea in Ayurveda is the relation between Manas and Shariram. The relationship between Manas and Shariram is something like the relationship between a resident and the residence. The Sharira is the residence and the Manas is the resident there. They share the wellness and illness between them. And a harmony between the residence and the resident is considered as quite essential for the experience of health. Now, in our times, if we look around, Ayurveda can be seen used more and more widely these days to treat many complex diseases which are otherwise incurable. But interestingly, though people come to Ayurveda seeking help, the conviction about the capacity of Ayurveda to diagnose diseases is often underrated. This is an important point which needs serious introspection. That is one important idea where we have to talk about the premises. See, any Shastra has its learning method and teaching method. Application of any knowledge is always related to the context. Context is otherwise known as Desha and Kala together. Let it be clinical or let it be theoretical. There should not be any contradiction between theory and practice. And whenever there are apparent conflicts, the theory will be tested again and again. And the application will be repeated again and again. And revisions will be made either in theory or application accordingly. This is a continuous process, and in this exercise, the methodology used is very important. That is why I have included a question of methodology here. So there is a question of methodology. What is that? Does Ayurveda has a methodology to do in this exercise? This is a fundamental question, and the answer is yes. Ayurveda has a methodology to deal with this sort of question of diagnosis. And here we will look into certain pramanas accepted in Ayurveda. Pramanas. Basically, 3 pramanas are accepted in Ayurveda. One is Aptopadesha, second is Pratyaksha, and the third one is Anumana, which also accommodates Yukti. I will come to the details. These pramanas are tools or the means by which one obtains accurate and valid knowledge. So, Aptopadesha can be such a tool, Pratyaksha can be such a tool, and Anumana also can be a tool. Anumana means inference. It is a major pramana in Ayurvedic inquiry as far as the clinical decision making is concerned. This is very, very important. The way in which one makes inference, Anumana, in a specific premise should suit to that premise. The way in which one makes Anumana in a particular premise should suit to that premise. That is an important point which we should keep in our minds. And this inference or Anumana is explained as Pratyaksha Purvaga. That means Anumana is made always following a Pratyaksha. Pratyaksha means direct sensory perception. So when a Pratyaksha happens, that is going to determine how valid the Anumana, the inference drawn out of it is. Then there is a question, is this Pratyaksha an independent principle or pramana? No. Pratyaksha depends on Aptopadesha. What is Aptopadesha? Aptopadesha means a credible or trustworthy instruction or documentation. So let us see this relation between these three. In Pratyaksha, what is already known to you is an important aspect. What is known to you decides what you perceive or what you can perceive. I am coming to the clinical study. This known factor is contributed by the knowledge acquired through Aptobhadesh. I will give you this as an example. In an example, a man finds a flower. So there is a pratyaksha of that flower. And the question is coming. What is the question? Which flower is this? If this man, the viewer, has seen this flower earlier and knows that it is a jasmine flower, the answer to the question is very simple. This is a jasmine flower. He has already seen it. He has the jnanam of the name of the flower along with the pattern of the petals, its color, its order, etc., etc. So he identifies that this is a jasmine flower. But suppose he has not seen this flower earlier. He knows that this is a flower. Then somebody who is trustworthy in that field and somebody who has no intentions to deceive this person should tell him that this is a jasmine flower. Then in that case, the pratyaksha of that person is influenced by, is facilitated by the aptobadesha, the advice, the comment from that particular individual. This is how they are related. So, if you have to gain knowledge about a particular object with the pratyaksha pramana, you should have a baseline of pre-acquired aptobadesha about that prameya. That is the point in it. And then the anumana that you makes further about that prameya, we can say that is connected to both pratyaksha and aptobadesha. These are all universal ideas, not confined to Ayurveda. But coming to Ayurveda, this has got very unique applications. Let us see some of them. See, coming to the clinical teaching of Ayurveda, dosha is the basic prameya. In the clinical training, the student is taught in two basic domains, Rogi Pariksha and Roga Pariksha. Pariksha of the Rogi and Pariksha of the Roga. Both this Rogi Pariksha and Roga Pariksha are done with the basic aim of making a proper dosha nirnaya. Dosha nirnaya is the basic intention because dosha is the basic prameya in Ayurveda. We are always looking for understanding the dosha completely with all the other connected paraphernalia or variables surrounding it. And the doshas are always understood in terms of their lakshanas and karmas. Lakshana means the signs and symptoms. Karma, the way in which they are manifesting in terms of action. So when we train a student in Ayurveda, the Ayurvedic clinical methods, there the starting point is to impart deep insight on doshas in terms of their lakshana and karma in both prakriti and vikriti using the available aptobadesha and then taking pratyaksha into consideration. This is very, very important. There are many aspects about it. How the dosha is presenting, what is the condition of the dosha at that point, whether it is moving dosha or stable dosha, which is the seat where the disease is going to be manifested. Many questions. So, first of all, the basic concern is to impart the idea of the lakshanas and karmas by aptobadesha, then show the doshas by pratyaksha, by assessing this lakshanas and karmas, and making the learner an expert in drawing valid inferences, anumana, from what is seen as pratyaksha. So this is an important exercise that one should follow in the clinical teaching of Ayurveda. So this is the sequence: Aptopadesha, then Pratyaksha, and then Anumana. This Anumana is very, very important because the capacity to make clinical decisions, right clinical decisions, is based on Anumana, and this capacity to make valid Anumana is supposed to be one of the most important skills that a Vaidya should acquire. This is very, very important. Now, coming to the Shariram. Shariram means the study of Shariram. Shariram is a branch of studying Shariram. In the academic framework, this branch is divided into Kriya Shariram and Rajana Shariram. Rajana deals with the structure and Kriya deals with the function. Kriya Shariram in Ayurveda, that means the study of the functional aspects of the Shariram, is actually a bridge between the fundamental concepts of Ayurveda and its clinical applications. But here also, of course, over a period of few years or few decades, the normal has changed, the way in which it is taught. And the change is very smooth and quite extemporaneous. We do not understand that even things have changed. Now, Shariram is not taught in its Ayurvedic premises. This is a very important drawback. Instead, it is done in the backdrop of Western medicine. During the teaching period, direct or indirect cues are given in the classrooms that the Shariram explained in the Ayurvedic treatises is the documentation of some primitive anatomy and physiology that the Indians had in the past. This may not be a deliberate attempt, but it is a fact. The Shariram, what we find in the textbooks, are the documentation of the primitive anatomy and physiology that the Indians had in the past, but the reality is entirely different. The Shariram that one sees in the classical textbooks of Ayurveda, taking all the shortcomings into account, is the essential one for understanding the Nidana Shastram and Chikitsa Shastram as per Ayurvedic methods. Without this Sharira Jnana, that is Sharira, it is really impossible to understand the Nidana Shastram in terms of Ayurveda and to do Chikitsa in Ayurvedic methods. So, again, this Sharira learning is closely connected with the Guna Karma Siddhanta, as we explained it in one of the earlier slides. So there are issues of missing the original premises. So I have listed out a few core areas where Ayurveda is showing its unique approach about the ideas of health and illness, medicine and food, treatment and care. These are derived out of the gross Ayurveda Darshana, which defines the original premises upon which Ayurveda is to be learned or taught. And taking the clinical training and the Sharira teaching as examples, I have tried to explain how the Aptobadesha is to be understood properly in the original premises, and how the student should be taught to translate this while going through Pratyaksha Pariksha, and how the student should be made an expert in drawing valid Anumana from what is perceived in Pratyaksha. That is the only way how this Aptobadesha, Pratyaksha, Anumana sequence can be made complete and effective. Now, at this point, there is a question. Is this Aptobadesha is the last words regarding that topic? Can they be revised, or they are supposed to be the something like a dictums from the heavens, or the absolute or ultimate and undisputable? No. That sort of message is also conveyed at times. That is why I'm asking that Purva Paksha and answering it. The authority of Aptobadesha is always challengeable. The great Acharya Charaka himself defines Aptobadesha as it shall be authoritative, meantime it shall be confining to the premises of the Shastra, or should be contextual. It should be tested by the researchers. It should be accepted by the scholars. It should be benevolent and open for debates, which will make it up to date. So, Aptobadesha should open the learner up to the right way of Pratyaksha, and this should happen in the formative hours of the Vaidya. And the Aptobadesha can be repeatedly challenged in connection with the applications. But in all these exercises, the question is whether that can be conducted in the original Ayurvedic premises or not. For doing this, there should be a right method of using these pramanas, Aptobadesha, Pratyaksha and Anumana, in the instructional practices of the basic principles, the Sharira, that means the Prakriti Pariksha and the Vikriti Pariksha. And we should reinvent the original learning methods of Ayurveda. And for this to happen, we need to invest more in the learning of the concepts of Nyaya Shastra in the formative period of a Vaidya itself. So that is the message what I would like to convey in the presentation as something like a take-home message. I have tried to explain it, as I mentioned earlier, with some specific areas. I'm concluding my presentation here. Thank you very much. And we shall see for some questions or some suggestions or remarks in this regard. Thank you very much.
Namaste. Thank you. Thank you so much, Vaidya Prasadji. That was really in-depth and there was so much information. And just to remind everyone that these sessions are recorded and they will be available on Indica Yoga's YouTube channel as well as our website and our social media. So we have a lot of people who come and visit the videos after the session. So please share. And of course, you can always come back and look at all the information that Vaidya ji has shared. I don't see any questions so far. So if in case you'll think of questions, not now, later, please feel free to email us. And in case you come up with questions, we still have a few minutes. So Vaidya ji, meanwhile, if any of our participants or people who see this video in the future would like to get in touch with you, is there an email address or even a website that they can visit? Koti ji, will you add this in the chat, please? Are you sharing it in the chat box, Vaidya ji?
Yes, I'm typing it in the chat box.
Okay, thank you. So in a second, we'll have that up. And oh, there it is. It's in the chat box. Koti ji, will you please make that available to everyone? Yes, Koti ji has put the email address. So anyone who'd like to get in touch with Vaidya Prasad ji, you can write to him at sunetriayurveda@gmail.com. Thank you so much again, Vaidya ji, for this session. Before we leave, is there any last message you'd like to share with us?
Definitely. You see, I know that this was a very tough topic and very strange topic, which may not be very palatable to the general Ayurvedic enthusiasts. But still, I opted for this topic because this is a very relevant one in our times. Because Ayurveda, the original concepts of Ayurveda and the original ideas of Ayurveda, including the theory and practice, is getting very fast overtaken by the concepts of Western medicine and Western science and the influence of the technology. And what happens is that at one point, Ayurveda is divided on or cornered into two categories. Number one, it is a very compassionate system. And second, it is a resource of raw information about herbs. So both these things are inadequate or doing injustice to the original Ayurveda. Ayurveda is Ayurveda because it has got its own original ways of looking at every problem. That logic behind Ayurvedic approach in its theory and practice is what makes it Ayurveda. But unfortunately, that idea is not coming into the dialogues in any place. Instead, it is celebrated for its compassionate approach or the sort of holistic approach, which are all true, I should admit, but that is not confined to the Ayurvedic area. Anybody can be compassionate. You just need to be a human being and you can be compassionate, and you can't expect all the Ayurveda Vaidyas to be compassionate, and you can't expect that everybody else is not compassionate. Similarly, it is not just about a collection of raw information about herbs. The way in which a herb is used or a mineral is used as food or as medicine, actually that logic regarding the Tridosha Siddhanta, the Panchabhuta Siddhanta, all these things are quite original to Ayurveda, and that is what is going to make Ayurveda a complete system. So identifying the uniqueness of Ayurveda and bringing those ideas to the discussion table in the public, at least in the intellectual circles, is supposed to be the need of the hour. Otherwise, this system of medicine is going to be just marked as a traditional herbal collection of information. So that is what I would like to give as a concluding point, especially behind the selection of this topic.
Thank you so much, Vaidya ji. And I completely agree with you, because I think when we respect the roots of a practice, we automatically end up practicing and teaching in a more authentic manner. that's so important. It gives context and it gives correct practices, which are so important because it's all based on these root texts. So I think it was a beautiful presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone for joining us. And I'll see you next week for our next Ayush Talk session. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Namaste. Namaste.